everyone. Welcome to episode 65 of Formidable Opponents, a show that pits three people who have known each other virtually their entire lives in a series of conversations as we argue what is best in a variety of fun, engaging, and critical pop culture topics we all debate about. I'm Randall, and with me as always, Bob and Joseph, and today's topic is Top 10 Rock Bands Part 2, Bands 5 to 1. So Bob, Joseph, we're continuing our two-part top 10 bands. How are you guys feeling this weekend before we get into this?
Assman. No, I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Been looking forward to this second part of the episode, talking music. You know, that's what we do best, even though a lot of our fans or people that listen probably disagree with us. But I've been looking forward to this top 5. I want to see what y'all have.
Oh, I'm very sure that they disagreed with me.
I'm sure you got a ton of metalheads out there.
I don't know, but I do want to reiterate that this is based on part of it is yes how we feel about each of these bands' places in history, and part of that is our own personal preference too. So look, I know if you listen to the first one, I listened to the episode again just to
laugh.
No, well, yeah, to laugh too, but. Yeah, I just want to reiterate that, like I'm pretty sure a lot of people are probably looking at some of us, mainly me, that we're like we're fucking crazy. But we are, yeah. And a lot of this has to do with some personal preference too. But anyway, other than that, I just want people to remember that.
So we're covering the top 5 bands today, guys. I will say this. I don't know if you feel the same way, but top 5 a lot easier than 6 through 15. We did honorable mentions 11 through 15, and of course we did our 6 through 10. But to me, top 5 was very easy. Did you guys have the same experience?
For me, I'd say top 3. I think I even struggled with 5, to be honest with you. I'm not gonna lie, but I think like 1 and 2 for sure. I had like no doubt. Probably the third one.
No doubt?
No.
Don't speak.
But no, even then, like the top 5, I was like, well, fuck, But I mean, I think I'm pretty sure we might have some overlapping ones and some we've already talked about, like we said in the previous one. But I know, man, I didn't find it that much easier.
So even the top 2, I debated to the very end. So no, the top 5, I had who I wanted in the 5. I just didn't know what order. Or at least the top 4, I knew what my top 4 were. Number 5 was kind of on the fence whether it should be lower, whether it should be higher. We'll get into that when we get into that.
Mm-hmm.
But what did you guys feel was the criteria? What were you thinking of when you were collecting these top 5 bands? Was it personal? Was it personal experience? Was it records? Was it era domination? What were some of the most important criteria in your all's minds?
For me, it was more quality of sound, influence, and just over influence on each other, I guess, and other bands, and then influence on, I guess, the fans. And for me, that's what I looked at. What about you, Bob?
Yeah, I'm thinking more like influence. I'm thinking more too like, what's the band that pops in your head when somebody says, who's the best rock band of all time? Like, there's always
history, things like that. Yeah,
there's always going to be a band that like just jumps out, pops in your head. That you're like, oh, it's got to be this band or this band or this. But there's a few like when you think of rock and roll, you think of hard rock. When you think of influence and history and the Mount Rushmore of rock and roll, there's some obvious answers there. Mm-hmm. So that really pops out or stood out to me when I was thinking of my band. When I think of, I think Joseph mentioned influence. Like, who do people want to sound like? What did they change? Where did we get this sound from? This, who had a ton of hits, who had a ton of great singles and great songs. And yes, longevity does play a key role, but also who just, changed music and changed rock and roll. I think that plays a huge role.
Let me ask you guys this, because I had an interesting question. I have a colleague who's he's a metalhead too, and he actually agreed a lot with Joseph's selections. No surprise. But then
Joe Michael, what's up, man?
It's not Joe Michael.
Oh, okay, it's my bad.
So when we were talking, he had asked me about what was the criteria for my selection, and I'll just take a band like U2 for instance. He had said, I don't consider U2 a rock band. I would say they're one of the top 5 bands or top 10 bands of all time. But when you talk about bands like U2, and then there's another band that's going to come up on our list, or at least 2 of our lists, this person's argument was they're a great band, but I don't think that's a rock band, and I don't think you're clearly defining what a rock band is. But What would you guys say to something like that? Because to me, rock is just so multi-tiered, and you have so many subcategories and genres in rock that I don't think you could decipher. I mean, we could say best speed metal, best hard rock, best punk. Those are all subcategories.
I agree with him to an extent, though, because certain things to me sound like rock. Like I know, like the Beach Boys were on the Watch Mojo list, and to me, that doesn't sound like rock and roll. That sounds like surf music. It's like pop. It's fun. It's commercial. It is what it is, and they're a great band. And they would, if we were doing best band of all time, and this is going to come up, for sure, they would probably be in that top 10 category.
Oh yeah, but even though Kokomo,
even Kokomo, that's a great song, Bermuda. I think that when you think of rock and roll, you got to have some guitar, you got to have some distortion, you got to have some melody. Yes, there's ballads. Yes, there's a bunch of different shades of the color of rock, but still there is one thing when people think about rock. I know there's something that pops in your head, that you're like, okay, that's rock and roll. You know, Beach Boys don't quite fit that criteria for me.
Rock music to me is it doesn't have to be the heaviest. It's just particular type that I like. Going back into what Bob says, it's the tone, it's how it's played, how the singing is done. I mean, that's a pretty bold question, to be honest with you, and I'm curious as to. I hope you got an answer from your colleague Rand on what he described as what a band, or defined what a band was.
He came into my office and he wrote his own top 10 list. He's actually
Joseph's was the best.
No, he was really happy that you talked about Lamb of God. He's actually really good friends with one of the guitarists from Drowning Pool.
Really?
So
yeah,
he's
Texas
a good
band.
Yeah, he's a good friend of his.
But did they get on his shoulders and sing to him?
So he was giving me his list, and I think like at number 7 or 8, he had Linkin Park. I told him to get out of my office, but he was telling me, but that's what rock is. You got to consider new metal as a genre of a top 10 band, because that was an era in rock that dominated late 90s, early 2000s. I don't see any of us having a new metal band on our list. I don't know, Joseph. It's kind of, I know you don't consider Deftones new metal. They're probably the
I know they're lumped into it. I understand
that.
So
Tool, right?
Tool, that's a good one. Yeah.
That one I'd really take, and I'd fight.
Nobody mentioned 9 Inch Nails, Joseph. Come on, you don't like techno metal?
I do like 9 Inch Nails. I just don't. I'm not.
They're not top 10.
They're not top 10. Not in top 10. I do enjoy their music. Obviously,
they're very different.
Me a lot about it.
Yeah, they're very very different. So yeah, I'm surprised we didn't talk about that. Oh, sorry.
But real quick. I don't agree with that. I understand it because, and I already said this last episode, the Deftones were making music around the time that, the bands like Limp Bizkit and Korn and everything else in between that sounded like that. So they kind of got lumped into that. But I think if you look at what they do today, it's the furthest thing from new metal. Anyway.
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of new metal, but do they deserve to be in the conversation? Yes, because a lot of their riffs, a lot of their rhythm was inspired by previous acts. So you could hear parts of Black Sabbath and parts of Metallica, and they just do something different with it. It's a different recipe, but it is what it is. Not a fan, but it does belong in the conversation. This question is for you, Joseph. I had done an episode, by the way, shout outs to our friends at Did Not Need to Know podcast once again. Jenna and Danielle, they have a they have a stepbrother who's in a death metal band called Hellslave from Italy. Now, Joseph, on a scale of 1 to burning your parents' house down while they're still asleep, how metal does that band name sound? Yeah, how metal does Hellslave sound?
That's pretty.
What's the one I sent you the other day, Joseph? It was like goat balls or some shit like that was on the heavy metal.
Oh, that was a Goatwhore.
Goatwhore, there we go. It's Goatwhore. I was like, dude, it's
which I know. I know who they are
on the liquid metal channel on Sirius. Goatwhore, yeah. So that's pretty up there with Goatwhore, I'd say.
It is.
It's a very, very, very metal name, and I listened to the episode, and not just because you were in it. The girls are very funny, and I did check them out, and I think that people would be like, I'd have a hard time explaining to people like why I like this, but I don't like that. And people will mostly say, Well, it sounds like the fucking same thing, or same thing, Joseph. And to me, is no, it's not. I did,
The way I feel about country music.
I checked them out. I was pretty surprised. I was like, wow, okay. I'm not going to go into the dynamics of the family, but I was like, wow, that's if I had, that's pretty good. Like, hey, that's something to like tell people about, but I guess they don't. Anyway, we can cut this.
Are they singing in Italian? Is what I want.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
Okay.
And it's
are you using the hand gesture
heavy
while they're singing or not?
it's very
using
heavy.
the hand gesture. Then fuck that. It's not real.
It's very it's very heavy music. Very the lyrical content is very much of that, what the name says, what the name of the band would suggest. Personally, like I said, it wasn't for me, and I gotta have a little more groove to my music, and it's like I said, I can play like that. I can play something from them or something similar to them, and play something that I really like. You'll probably say it's the same shit, Joseph. It's the same shit. And I'm like, no, it's not. But I checked them out.
Thank you.
No, I like Cannibal, and see that's the thing. I like Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah, we saw them.
But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to explain. I checked them out. Interesting. I'll say that. Very metal name, by the way.
Yes, Hellslay. You can't get more metal than that. He's got Hell. You got Slay.
Goatwhore.
I like that name. Anyway, we're going to go on to our top 5 list, but of course we're going to start off with Watch Mojo's list. They started off number 5, the Rolling Stones. I have them on my list. Bob, you have them on your list. We could save them for when we get to them.
We're getting to them right now because I have them number 5 on my list.
Talk to us, Rolling Stones. All right, you
Rolling
got
Stones. I love the Rolling Stones and their sound and their longevity. You can't go wrong with a band like the Rolling Stones, man. It was a very difficult, and I'm going to say this again, it was very difficult for me to arrange my top 5 when I get into my 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Frustrating.
Was it frustrating?
It's frustrating.
Yeah. But the Rolling Stones, man, I mean, how can you argue with hit singles after hit singles and them still being alive after all the drugs they've used for the past 70 goddamn years? You know what I mean? And still rocking, putting in the great performances. The singles, man, even their softer stuff like Wild Horse is still one of my favorite songs of all time. Can't Get No Satisfaction. Everything about them screams a great rock and roll band. Now, here's why I felt like they shouldn't be higher. I'd
like to hear this.
They didn't they didn't give off the rock and roll vibe overall. And what I mean by that is they do have quite a poppy commercial type feel to them, where it wasn't as, this is gonna sound funny, it wasn't as hard as I'd like it to be. You could
have said heavy.
I could have said heavy, yeah. No, I think hard is the right way to go. Anyways,
it always is.
There we go. I do love them. I mean, what do y'all thought? I mean, the Rolling Stones, man. I know Randy wants to talk about them at a later time because he has them higher, but what do you think about that, Joe? Do you think 5 is too high or too low for the Rolling Stones?
Go ahead, Joseph. I have something to say about him, but go ahead, Joseph.
Well, here's probably where I'm going to lose another the other half of the audience.
But you might find a cool chick that's into Dracula too.
I didn't. I don't have them. I didn't obviously look. They're not on my list, and I didn't put them anywhere in between the 1 through 15. And I know that's probably going to shock some people. Am I a fan of the music? Sure, I am. I think the fact that they, that they're still doing it to this day. Nothing like, I don't think they've put out any new albums, but touring, still sounding pretty good live. I think that's fucking awesome. Like Bob said, after all the shit that they've been through, still doing their thing, thankfully. What's the front man's name again? I can't remember.
Jagger.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. Blanking on that. It's good, happy, feel good music. I think the closest to I don't know, kind of going to what Bob said, the closest to a more rockin' heavier sound is Painted Black. and which is a great fucking song. But then you got, and I'm not saying Start Me Up's not a good song, but then you go from Paint It Black to Stop Me, yep. It's so it's just a little bit different.
You nailed that shit. I'm just gonna say that. It was like Randy's Paul McCartney. You nailed that.
So I mean, it's just a little, I understand the career. I think it's awesome, but I don't have them anywhere on my list. And I know, like I said in the beginning, personal preferences coming into this. It's rearing its ugly head right now, but I don't have them up here, man.
I agree with that, dude. How you nailed it. Like Start Me Up, and like one of my favorite songs from them is Gimme Shelter. And it doesn't really give off a rock vibe to me, but it's just a great fucking song. Angie, another song that if you're heartbroken,
She's Like a Rainbow. I love She's Like a Rainbow. It's a great fucking song, but it's not
just amazing shit. Amazing music. Amazing music. Again, this is where it comes into play. If we were talking about greatest bands of all time, we may have a debate there. I bet you they'd be in Joseph's top 10 if it was greatest bands of all time, but just not rock bands.
I do have them later on my list, but a few points on the positioning for number 5 for the Rolling Stones on your list. And Joseph, you not having them on the list doesn't make me feel as bad as I did last week that not having Black Sabbath in the top 15. So,
trust me, you're still young.
So, are they this low on your list, Bob, because you hate the way Mick Jagger dances, or is it just?
I love the way he sings. No, I don't hate the way he dances. I hate the fact that you say he dances like a dream. I'm like, wait, hold on a minute, hold on. If he's your status quo for what a dancer should be.
I'll cut you some slack. I think this is as low as anyone can put them. Anything below 5. And you don't deserve to watch the 13 Martin Scorsese movies he uses Gimme Shelter in, all right? So, other than that, Keith Richards snorted his dad's cremated remains and fell off a coconut tree, and the motherfucker still rocks. I mean, that's rock and roll.
100% booger sugar.
I'm surprised Joseph doesn't have him as high, considering Keith Richards a fucking vampire.
I think Start Me Up was a message song. By the time the 80s rolled around, everybody thought, well, they're into synth pop. Well, the bands that were popular at the time were more synth pop, and the Rolling Stones were done. Start Me Up, if you listen to the lyrics, it's very much a message song with Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones saying, we're not going to fucking go anywhere. And they're right. They haven't gone anywhere.
What was the message in Dancing in the Street?
Is that maybe you shouldn't be doing that with your friend.
I don't want to call them a pop band, but it kind of is. I mean, the way we're describing the music, it's very good music.
They're just not straight up rock and roll. Like they expand. They're very multifaceted. They have a lot of different
that's styles of music. That's kind of how we feel. But I mean, I don't fault you for putting them where you put them, Bob. I can understand it.
Joseph, who'd you have
sexual.
Who'd you have at number 5, Joseph?
I had at 5. I have Nirvana. This is where obviously to me this is where this band belongs, at least in the top 5. Very, very. I know the question of longevity is going to come into play for this one, probably because officially only 2 records, even though there is the other LP albums, Insecticide, Bleach. Bleach. Yeah, let's call that an official record too. Yeah. But most people, like he says, most people didn't own it. This music and this band affected a group of people in the 90s. And just, I know that might be considered a polished sound, but it was crazy. It took over. It was this huge thing. It was this massive sound. They weren't the first to do it, but they were the most well-known. Were they the most popular? Definitely. And I think because of their impact on society, on other bands, not necessarily how they played, but affecting the record sales, making people other bands want to oh fuck, we have to do something else because this glam shit isn't working anymore, or this is what's in. We're making other bands either change how they're sounding to try to get people to buy their, or just completely closing up shop. Nirvana did that, and that's why I got them right here. That's why I think they're very important in rock and roll history, and why I believe they are in a top 5 in any list like that. Guys?
We all have Nirvana on the top 10. I had them at number 8. Bob, I believe you had them at 7.
I'm sorry.
I had them at 10. I had
You
them
had
at
them
10.
Okay, 10.
Yeah.
I had them okay, so they're a top 10 band. I think we all agree to that. Rock band. I love Nirvana, and as big as they were, I still consider them underrated. That's why, I mean, I could see them as number 5, but I could see them as like, if somebody left them out at the top 10, I could see why. They had another gear that we unfortunately never saw. That's why I can't put them as high as I would like. I mean, because I love Nirvana. I mean, when we think of some of these bands, and we talked about this last week, guys, a lot of these bands were big before we were born, but Nirvana, I remember the first time I heard Smells Like Teen Spirit, I was in high school. It was a song that changed my life. It was a CD, the first CD I've ever bought. So Nirvana has so much.
Changed my life too, because you played it. You played it. I mean, it did. I think I've already said this before. I'm sorry to interrupt you. But
So you're responsible for Lamb of God, Randy.
yeah, thank you, Ran. You stirred me down the path that I'm on right now. No, you bought the
Yeah,
CD,
exactly.
played it for us, front to back. No, it was a CD. So just one, first beginning to end, and I liked everything that I was hearing, and that's the start. I'm sorry. Continue.
I think people were pissed off over In Utero, but creatively and sonically, it was growth and freedom for the band. So I think the next album was going to piss off a lot more Nirvana faithful, but it would have been the most mature. I think they would have gone to rock route. I think they would have, put out something that a lot of people would have, had their minds blown by. I would love to put them in the top 5, but to me, 5 years wasn't enough. It could be enough for many bands, but not Nirvana. They're a personal, sentimental favorite for me, and I think for all of us. But I mean, I don't argue with a position. I just wish, I wish we had another album or two. We could have put them in the top 3.
Yeah, I was thinking when he said that, I was thinking of Metallica when they put out the Black Album, that their main fans were really pissed off about it. Their heavy metal fans and thrash metal fans were really pissed off about it. But it helped them grow. And then came out the Load album, then the Reload album, and then they just kept getting better and better. So I could see that. Now, where I agree with you 1,000,000%, Joseph, is that you do have them at 5 for this simple fact. When we talk about greatest rock bands, we're talking about bands as a whole. And having Dave Grohl as your drummer, and then for Dave Grohl, after the passing of Kurt Cobain, to go on and create his own band, and to have that band in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and to have that band a part of our conversation last week as an honorable mention as one of the top 10 or top 15 greatest rock bands of all time, it really does say something to Nirvana itself, because it wasn't just Kurt Cobain. Dave Grohl had a huge part in that band, and it was sort of like the catalyst that shot them off into superstardom, because their old drummer, he just wasn't cutting it at the time. Remember, we had this great debate when we talked about Nirvana in our Nirvana episode. That was a great episode, by the way, best Nirvana song. And Dave Grohl, once he joined the band, they became superstars, and they were the biggest band in the world at one point in time. So to have both those guys in there, and for Dave Grohl to do what he did after the fact, I think that says a lot about Nirvana itself. So having them at number 5, I can totally agree with that.
For my number 5, I had Pink Floyd, the architects of psychedelic and blues. You can't argue that. They were social, political, and emotional, and they tied that in with progressive smart rock. This was a thinking person's rock band. Dark Side of the Moon was like the World Series, the Super Bowl, the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup of albums. I mean, death, emotion, darkness. Pink Floyd was like the first real emo band when you think about that. We joke a lot about emo bands.
How dare you?
Yeah.
Pink Floyd was emo. They just have
the painted nails and the hair over the right eye.
They just didn't have eyeliner.
Absolutely not.
But now emo bands sing because they hate their parents. Floyd hated the establishment, all right? So let's just and to me, this was outsider rock, but it was inclusive. They appealed from everyone to, jocks, stoners, to weird kids arranging their Funko Pop villains in alphabetical order. I mean, Pink Floyd was for everybody. What did you guys think about Pink Floyd? I don't know if you want to talk about them now or later on in your list.
No, I think that this is a perfect time to talk about Pink Floyd. I have Pink Floyd is my actual number 4 pick. So, I mean, since this is the end of the 5th pick and going into the 4th pick, I think this works out absolutely perfectly. I can agree with you 1,000,000%. They deserve to be in the top 5 of greatest rock bands of all time. They were this psychedelic English band that really turned the tables on everything. They didn't sound just like everybody else in the 70s and 60s. They had the blues, but they had that psychedelic. I think they took that psychedelic bluesy sound into a whole new level and a whole new level of mainstream. And like you said, it wasn't just, stoners and hippies that were listening to it. It was jocks. It was parents. It was kids. It was teenagers. It was everyone, man. That type of music, it's just like the perfect type. I won't go emo, but I'll say the perfect type of mood music, man. And it was anti-establishment, and it did have a great message in the lyrics. But there's just so many great fucking songs when it comes to Pink Floyd. I tried my best to put Pink Floyd in the top 2, and the closest I could get to was 4. But I mean, goddamn, I think they're probably the most underrated. And they're still in my top 4, and you're top 5, Rand. And Joseph, they're probably in there somewhere too for you. It is. They're still one of the most underrated bands, or maybe the most underappreciated bands. From Wish You Were Here to Time to Great Dig in the Sky, Joseph, Us and Them. I know that's your favorite. Money, Mother, Breathe. Everything that they've done, their Pompeii stuff, Shine On, You Crazy Little Diamond. Oh man, that's my favorite song of all time. At any fucking level of pop, country, rock, anything, that's one of my favorites of all time. Shine On, You Crazy Diamond. It's just, their music just has a tone to it, has a feel to it, and there is nothing quite like Pink Floyd and their sound.
Joseph? I
think I want to say that going forward,
it would have been funny if he said you're wrong.
No.
Wrong.
I want to tell the listeners that I think for the next, let's just be honest, like for the next I don't know, maybe our next 3, so from 4 to 1, we're kind of gonna feed off of each other. I read out real quick number 4. Since we're into number 4 for Watch Mojo was Pink Floyd as well.
It was Pink Floyd. Yes.
Wow,
yeah.
Nice.
So I don't disagree with this. With this placement for Watch Mojo at all, I don't. 4 is cool with me. I'll talk about him right now. I have him a little bit later, but we'll talk about him right now. Pink Floyd is just timeless. The music is timeless. That's all. That's the best way I can describe it. It never goes out of style. It doesn't. We weren't around to enjoy this when it was fresh and new, but when we did receive it, when we were able to listen to it and hear it, it sounded just as I can only imagine it the way I took it, the way we, me personally, hearing this music, the way I felt and experienced. The first time I heard the Beatles. Anyway, the way I thought of it was the way that everybody else thought of it back then. And that's what I mean by like, it's just timeless. And then there's like just these great songs about love and death, and like you said, and time and space. It's just perfect. Like trying to place Pink Floyd in a top 10 list is very difficult. And I'm fine with 4 for Watch Mojo. I'm fine with 4 for Bob. Randy, you had him at 5?
At 5, yes.
That's I think
you fucked up.
Yeah, you fucked up.
Go ahead, finish.
I know. I'm just like it's just timeless fucking music. I can't say anything more than that. I will never not get tired of it. Bob, your kids, they love this music too. Yeah. Like Randy, I don't know if you've showed Pink Floyd to your kids, but like,
no, I want them to sleep at night.
I think it's you can, kids are gonna grow up these days today. Still to this day, you can show this to the kids in high school right now that are like little rockers or whatever, little metalheads, and if for some reason they haven't heard of it by now, if you showed it to them and introduced it to them tomorrow, I think they would really, really be into it and dig it. That's how awesome this band is.
Go ahead, Ren. I know you have something to say, but go ahead.
Just a quick point. Joseph made a good point about not experiencing Pink Floyd when they were fresh and new. I actually had the opportunity to experience a Pink Floyd song when it was released. And Bob, I don't know if you've heard this song before, "Learning to Fly." It was released in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to it on MTV and thinking and this was way after Pink Floyd was, their apex was here and gone. But when I first heard "Learning to Fly," which was a Pink Floyd song released 10 years after they were at the top of their game in the rock industry, I was like, wow, they sounded as good as ever, and they just kept putting out good music.
Like On the Turning Away came out in like 87 too, and that song is amazing,
I forgot about that song, dude. Thank you. I completely.
It sounds quintessential Pink Floyd from like the earlier stuff.
Dude, speaking of which, that's my playlist right now. I'm sorry.
You nailed it perfectly. Like we weren't around during their heyday, like to hear them when they first came out were so perfect, but I was actually a sophomore in high school, and this is when CDs were really, really popular. And I was really into buying CDs, and I had my Metallica CDs, and no doubt about it, got a No Doubt CD for Christmas. Thank you, Kenny. And we're collecting, and I actually heard they're doing the Laser Show, Pink Floyd Laser Show in McAllen, and blah blah blah. And I'd kind of heard of my dad had played some Pink Floyd for me and Led Zeppelin, but he'd played a lot of the music where I was just trying to learn the names of the songs and the names of the bands. You know what I mean? I knew the songs. I could pinpoint the songs. I knew a lot of the lyrics, but some of the bands I couldn't quite pick up on yet because I was still, just a kid trying to figure it out. And I came across the Dark Side of the Moon album when I was a sophomore at Target or at Walmart, wherever I was, and I picked it up and I heard it and I was like, holy shit, this is what music is supposed to sound like. What the fuck have I been? Like that whole entire album, I hit play on the CD player and I listened to it from beginning to end in one sitting, and I was like, holy shit, this is wow, I get it. Like that's some great music. And then when you have, of course, the guitar play. Now, so for some people they might say, oh, they're psychedelic and not necessarily rock. If you hear David Gilmour play the fucking blues guitar and play his solos, dude, he's really, really tough to beat when it comes to blues guitar. Check out some of their concerts and, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, the live performance at Pompeii or wherever they were. His guitar play is just amazing.
Have you guys watched The Wall, the 1982?
Yes.
The animation on there. It's trippy.
Trip.
Yeah, it's trippy.
I saw some of it because I did see the Laser Show like in 6th grade. I went to my aunt took me to go see it. That was like sixth or 7th grade. Seeing all those people at such a young age, clearly people
high off their asses.
Yeah, exactly. High and drunk. But it was awesome, and the music, it's so cool. They did the part of it was the whole Dark Side of Oz thing, the Wizard of Oz. We've been on Pink Floyd for a while. I'm sorry.
Yeah, now it's all right. We could talk about Pink Floyd all night.
Yeah, we could. Fans, just so we know. Coming soon, at a certain point, we'll be doing a best Pink Floyd song of all time. I think to do them justice.
Yes. Joseph, who'd you have at number 4?
Yeah. Anyway, to completely ruin that whole conversation. No. Number 4. Real tough to place too as well, man. I went with Led Zeppelin, man. I did. I put Zeppelin.
Too low.
Had you heard that before?
You mean two?
That was a great laugh. I love your laugh. That was a great laugh. I always know when I hit on a joke, Randy hits a different level of laughter. It's not just like a quick. All right, go. I'm sorry, just Led Zeppelin, baby. Yes,
no, it's cool. Look, man, I put Zeppelin at 4. I did because great music, obviously, tremendous musicians, incredible voice. I don't want to call it. They were pretty heavy for not being considered a heavy, metal band. They got some amazing songs with some great in-your-face beats and guitar solos and whatnot. The only reason, and then the influence on everybody, on guitar players, the placement, again, it's just hard to come up with a spot. The only thing I guess that and this is an argument because I used to not think this was like a huge deal, but going and delving into it, I don't like to talk about like longevity of a career. I try to stay away from that. The way that you described, I guess, Nirvana, Randy, is the way that I describe Led Zeppelin.
Okay.
There should have been more. There should have been more from Led Zeppelin. I wish there was more. But
Robert Plant's still making some great music.
Yeah, well, I mean, he is, but getting together
after the loss of who was it, John Paul Jones, a drummer. I think they were like they never wanted to do it again because like a piece of the band was gone.
John Bonham,
John Bonham. I'm sorry, John Bonham. Did I say John Paul Jones? Mm-hmm. I mean, after John Bonham passed away, I think they were kind of done with Led Zeppelin was done. Like they let it die there with them.
Yeah, and so I'm sorry, real quick. I think we were kind of robbed of that. Unfortunately, and so kind of the argument that Randy, I guess, would give about Nirvana to me is how I kind of perceive Led Zeppelin. I used to, like I said, I used to not feel that way, but I kind of do now. I know Bob's made that argument a few times.
I think if we measured this in a point system and we tabulated all the votes or all the positionings and then did an average, I think Led Zeppelin would probably be like the overall winner. I think we all love them, of course. they were the image and sound of an era that keeps getting referenced. A lot of things about the 70s suck, but the rock music just keeps pushing things. It was really good. I mean, I joke that they were too low, but I mean, 4 is pretty damn good. I mean, if you're the 4th best rock band in somebody's opinion of all time, if you include every rock band, including Hellslave, I think number 4 is pretty damn good.
Goatwhore.
I'll talk about them later. But Bob, anything you want to say about Zeppelin?
Now, I disagree with where you have them, Joseph. I wholeheartedly disagree with where you have them. I'm going to give my opinion on it, but when I talk about them, where they fall on my list, I do think that what Randy says is correct. Like, hey, you're in your top 4 rock bands of all time. That's an honor. But I do think they should have been a little bit higher. But I'll get more into that once we get to that point.
Quick on number 4, I got Queen. Emotion, rock, escapism, encapsulation. My biggest question is, how in the hell did Revenge of the Nerds get the rights to We Are the Champions? They had Thriller on the soundtrack too. Freddie Mercury and Michael Jackson were running laps with Clap Your Hands, everybody. Everybody clap your hands. I'll never...
They're nerds as well. That's why they're related to the movie.
I mean, these guys were trendsetters. They blended rock and opera. Nobody did this before. A Night at the Opera is what cemented their legacy. I mean, just brilliance. They hung on tight in the 80s. They sang on the Iron Eagle soundtrack. One Vision is a great song, by the way. I love that song. The Flash Gordon soundtrack, I mean, they made up with it with a Highlander soundtrack. They were kind of hit and miss in the 80s, but I think they were still relevant and they were still good. I love Queen. I love the fact that Freddie Mercury is the best singer in the world. Brian May's awesome.
That's Celine Dion, sir. She says it herself.
But I do love Queen a lot. That was my short bullet point version because we talked about them last time. What do you guys think about Queen?
I think that Queen and Freddie Mercury is one of the greatest frontmen of all time. If you were to say he's the best, and somebody would say, I'd rank him number 3, or somebody would say, I rank him number 4 or number 6, you'd all be correct. Like, he could fall anywhere on that spectrum, and I would totally agree with it because he was a showman. He was a great and beautiful singer, like you said. Now, there's a lot of their songs are rock. They have a lot of songs that are very poppy and commercial that I wouldn't consider rock and roll. So I think that's why I knocked them down a few. I think I had them number 6 or number 7 on my list. But besides that, though, here's my thing, and I'm probably going to piss off a lot of like really big Queen fans. When we talk about greatest rock bands of all time, you could ask me, I don't know their guitarist's name. I don't know their drummer's name. I don't know anybody else in the band other than, maybe it's my fault. I know a lot of their songs. They have a lot of great hits. I listen to a lot of them. I have them on my playlist. I love their music, but I couldn't name you their bassist or their drummer or their guitarist. Like I really couldn't. And that's, so I think that kind of knocks them back a little bit because it was a Freddie Mercury show. It really, really was. And if we're talking about rock bands, the greatest rock bands of all time, what gave Nirvana some extra push was that they had Dave Grohl as well as, Kurt Cobain. And maybe it's my fault that I don't know the other band member's name, but I just think it's the Freddie Mercury was Queen. And I think that it may kind of pull them back a little bit from being, top 3 for me. What do you think, Joseph?
Go ahead, Joseph. I'll respond after that.
We discussed them previously, right, Bob?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have them in the top 10?
Mm-hmm.
You had them at where?
I'm sorry, I had them number 7.
I don't. You know what? You'd probably have to refer back to what I said back then because I'm not
threw those notes away, man.
Look, what I said prior, what I said in the last episode applies now, and I'll just reiterate what Bob said. You know what? I've never thought about it that way. You think of, like he said, you think of Queen, you think of Freddie Mercury. I'm pretty sure we said that last time, but and it's not, a knock on the other musicians too. I mean, that does kind of ring in, that does, when you think about it, it kind of makes you think like, well, fuck, you really don't know any of the other musicians, but the music, they're good songs. Clearly the guy is a tremendous vocalist. He was a very talented songwriter. If they weren't called Queen, it could have just been Freddie Mercury. I think he could have been a solo artist on his own. I didn't have him on anywhere from 1 through 15, and I don't have an issue with that. I think the music's cool. I enjoy the music. I just, to me, I didn't see the need to put him on this list. So
neither of you are impressed that Brian May, their guitarist, has had the same hairstyle for 50 years and has had the same
wig. That's why it's a wig. Sorry, Brian May. I'm just kidding, brother. Beautiful head of hair.
So Watch Mojo had Queen at number 3. So that leads us to our top 3 band. Bob, who'd you have at 3?
Oh, shit. Now we're getting to number 3. Now, when we ask this question, when somebody asks greatest rock bands of all time, you have to talk about Metallica. Metallica is one of the greatest rock bands of all time, and this hits on so many different levels. It's not just the longevity. It's not just the popularity. It's not just the album sales. It's not just the number one hits. By the way, they've had a number one hit and album sale in 3 different decades. That's the only rock band to ever do that ever is Metallica. It's not just the fact that they've survived. I wouldn't say survived, and they haven't really changed their music. They started off as a thrash metal hard rock band, and they've continued that hard rock thrash metal band. They've released albums like Death Magnetic, and they went back to their roots. They keep putting out hit after hit, and their popularity never stops. When you think about rock and roll and hard rock music, you think about Metallica. Metallica is the quintessential hard rock band. They're the best hard rock band of all time, in my personal opinion. But this being the best rock band of all time, I had to pull them back a few spots. But it's very, very hard. I'm sure, Rand, you're going to argue against it, but I just cannot see, we talk about Queen, and yeah, there is some rock and then some kind of pop. Talk about Rolling Stones, there's some rock and some kind of pop commercial music. And you talk about Metallica, it's rock music, in your face, loud. Even their slow music is still rock, it's still blues, it's got a little bit of elements of everything. They're the greatest. I mean, they're one of my favorite bands, and there's no way in hell I could keep them out of that top 3.
What are we on?
Number 3.
I just said 3, Joseph. Sorry, Joe. Sorry, fans. Joseph was wiping the tears from her eyes after me talking about Metallica. He got lost in the moment, so he forgot where we're at.
I know we're going to talk about Metallica further on down the line. I just want to make a couple of points, and Joseph, you
here it is. Here it is, fans.
No. I had Metallica at number 7. I think their apex was sandwiched during a time where Guns N' Roses and Nirvana were the 2 top bands, arguably. And I only say that because Metallica, they were there, but I think what slights them a lot is that they were so behind the curtain for so long that when they started to come out and they released the Black Album. I mean, Master of Puppets, of course, was like their first big popular album, and then of course their Black Album, and they became one of the biggest bands in the world. And then they did Load and Reload, and everybody thought, you know what, they're not as good as we thought they were. And then they did all these what is it, Garage Inc. or Garage Days?
Yeah, they did Garage Inc.
Garage Inc. was a great album. I thought that brought them back into, okay, this is the Metallica we like and that we love, and that they, Death Magnetic and all these other experimental I guess you could say ventures they went on. I thought, okay, you know what? This band's for real. They put on a great show, charged too much for tickets, but they put on a great show.
I'd pay whatever.
It's worth every penny, sir.
People love them. And we're going to talk about them a little later, but I do think that number 3 might be a little too high for me. But Joseph, what do you think? Do you want to say anything about them right now?
I'd rather wait. You got him at 3. I'm cool with that, Bob. Because I think, aside from, and no offense to you, Randy, it's been pointed. It's been pointed out that Bob and I share a brain, apparently.
A brain, yeah, apparently. It's been pointed out.
So I think
they're supposed to edit that out.
So I think Bob's. Even though our 1 through 3 are going to be kind of similar, but different. I think we both will respect, and I'm not saying that I don't respect yours, man.
But he did throw a glass across the room when he said they shouldn't be 3.
But I know I'm sure that right now our selections we just might have them in different places. That's it. So I want to talk about them a little later.
Cool. Well, who'd you have at number 3?
At number 3, well, see, here's the thing. We just went on this massive discussion about Pink Floyd, and I have Pink Floyd at number 3. So I chose them at number 3. To me, I thought that like how we talked about earlier, the influence on their fans, the like I said earlier, the timelessness of the sound, the music, the emotion that you feel in hearing these songs. I know Bob mentioned Us and Them. If I've had like fucking, if I'm already like on beer number 8 and Us and Them come on, little tear drops from the eye. It's just an amazing song.
I have to tell this funny quick story. We were drinking one night.
Don't embarrass me.
We were celebrating the.
This will not be edited out.
We just announced like the birth of our first kid. Like we were pregnant with everybody on Easter, and everybody's here celebrating. We announced all our friends, and we're here drinking, and it was like 2 or 3 in the morning. We were having a great time, and Joseph had put on Us and Them to like full blast, and then like just to like stand in the corner and just like take it all in, listen to that song. It was a great night, and my sister-in-law was here with her goofy boyfriend that we really liked, but we had just met at the time. He goes and he turns off the song to put on some like poppy fun song. Joseph's like, "What the fuck? I'm gonna hit him, Bob. I'm gonna fucking hit him, Bob." I thought that was hilarious. He's like, "He's fucking turned off Us and Them, man. Who turns off Up and Them?" Yeah, so it was a funny moment.
Joseph was like, "You're not us, you're them."
Them. That saxophone intro. It's oh my god, dude. That's just.
Yes,
it takes you to another level. If you're feeling a certain way, like if you're high, like which I don't know that. I've never gotten high to this song because I don't get high. Yeah, I mean, if you're feeling pretty good for the night and you're just having a great time, and god dang, that song is just an amazing song. So I had him at 3. That's where I got him. I think that's a respectable spot. On anybody's list, on any kind of publication, things like this, that's just where I put them.
I still got stuff to say on Pink Floyd. Bob, do you have anything?
Go for it, man.
No, I want you to say something. Right, throw it back in your face.
No, I love Pink Floyd. I think being drunk and doing drugs makes Floyd sound fantastic. But yes, Guess what? That's exactly when you want to listen to music, when you're drinking, when you're doing drugs. That's why Pink Floyd is so great. I mean, they were both the awakening and the lullaby. Their songs made you think. For number 3, I had Led Zeppelin, Pioneers
what
of Heart.
What the fuck, man?
Pioneers of, we talked about Led Zeppelin earlier. I just have a few.
You had Zeppelin at 3. I'm sorry. I just thought I thought you kind of mirrored Mojo, so I thought you.
No, he has them at 3.
Mojo, who did they have at 3? They had Queen at 3, so we didn't mention that, but watch
so
Mojo.
They were wrong.
They were wrong, of course. And for number 3, I had Led Zeppelin. Quick bullet points. Pioneers of hard rock and heavy metal, top 3 lead singer, top 3 guitarist, top 3 bassist, top 3 drummer of all time, Page, Plant, Bonham, and Jones. I don't think there's a better collective musical lineup in any band. And it sucks that Whitesnake tried to sound like them. Okay.
They look like them. The lead singer tried to look like Robert Plant. There's no way you can tell me he didn't.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see him.
They challenged ideals and they challenged the genre. They didn't fuck around. Their compositions were beautiful. It was almost like if they were outworldly, like they were from the heavens or another planet. They owned the 70s and they've influenced everybody since. Love Led Zeppelin. 3 is, I think, too low for them for some lists, but I have them because of the other 2 bands I have listed. Anything else on Led Zeppelin, guys?
I'm going to save my comments for where I have them on my list. All right. But Joseph, go for it, buddy.
It's just going to be, kind of nitpicking at this point where you place them. I was fine with 4. I mean, that might not be, the point with some people. Obviously, Randy had him one later at 3. I'm sure we're going to get to them later with Bob, like you said. Everything that Randy said times 2, man. I mean, it's just what an amazing influential band that, and just to reiterate, I think that we unfortunately got too little of.
For sure.
Wish there was more, but man, the stuff that we do have is just amazing and just incredibly great music.
All right, so we had Watch Mojo. They had Queen at 3. They had Led Zeppelin at 2. And Bob, who'd you have for your number 2 rock band of all time?
This is going to be a shocker, guys. The Beatles. I have the Beatles at number 2. When we're talking about some of the greatest rock bands of all time, the Beatles is right up there with everyone, every single person. Now, this is one I really highly debated. I mean, you could probably guess now what I have at number 1, but I was back and forth with the Beatles and my other band, my number 1 pick. What got me was, just like what got me kind of with the Rolling Stones, is not all of it is rock and roll. They have so many great hits. They're so influential. And then you have some of the greatest artists and greatest guitarists. And, I was going to say best drummer, but he wasn't even the best drummer in the goddamn band. Like, according to John Lennon, what do you say? Not even the best drummer in the band. We had Lennon, you had Paul McCartney, you had George Harrison. You had these great individuals that created such beautiful music and so many fucking great songs and hits within a short period. What is it, like 10, 11 years, man, that they were together from like 68
shorter
to about, from like to about what was it? No, I'm sorry.
It was like 63 to 70, right?
Yeah, it was. I'm sorry. It was like 1961 to like 1970. So about 10 years. Let's call it 10 years. They had so many great songs. I mean, so many great rock songs, and they had the harder stuff, the Helter Skelters, the Happiness is a Warm Gun, but then they would have songs that are so beautiful and so perfect, like The Long and Winding Road, which is one of my favorite songs of all time, but it doesn't scream rock and roll to me. A Day in the Life. Great song. Joseph hates it, but great fucking song, and I love it so much, but it doesn't scream rock and roll. Yesterday, another beautiful song, doesn't scream rock and roll. They have so many songs that really, accentuate the guitar and the guitar parts and the drum parts are extremely good. By the way, big props to Ringo Starr. He refused to do a drum solo in any fucking song. They try to get him to do it, and they're like, you're such a great drummer, do a drum solo like a lot of the rock artists were doing, and he refused to because he was like, no, it's a band first. I'll never do that kind of thing because it's a band first. And such a great thing for Ringo Starr to do, to be like so selfless. And I think if you hear his music after the fact, which is, it's definitely not rock and roll, but it's really fucking cool and really fucking fun. And having done so much research about the Beatles in our episodes that we did and going over it again for this episode, he's such a selfless, great person, dude. And it's somebody you'd really want to model a bandmate or a best friend after, because he's such a great dude. I mean, hopefully, I'm sure somebody's going to comment, well, do you know in 65 he did cocaine off of somebody's ass or some shit like that, right? I'm sorry. I'm talking about the main points of what he was as a bandmate, okay? Sorry, bro, that delved into that kind of shit.
That'd make him a greater dude.
I know. But I love the Beatles so much. They just have such an eclectic mix of music. If we're talking about the greatest band of all time, just band, leaving a label off of it, there is no fucking question. There is no other band that even comes close to the Beatles. But as far as specific rock band, I feel like I just had to hold them back one spot at number 2. What do y'all think about that?
Interesting.
I'll get this out of the way quick because
here it goes.
No, I'm gonna feel. No, for reasons that you just stated, Bob. I don't have them on this list. I don't have them anywhere in the top 15. I don't have them anywhere, and that was a personal choice. And the way I it's the way I kind of feel about the Rolling Stones. The way I described the Rolling Stones, about the music, how it's great music, how it's awesome stuff, and I gave them props for their career, still doing their thing, obviously. But unfortunately, it's a different situation with the Beatles. But I don't. The way what you just said right now, if you want to talk best band ever, I'm gonna have them on this list. I know later on, with the songs like you said, "Happiness is a Warm Gun" and "Helter Skelter." I know that a lot of the sound took some experimental approaches later on in the career, and drugs were a factor in that probably, and particular women, but. If I look back at the whole catalog and the songs that we think about, that we mentioned in previous episodes, praising and talking about, they don't scream rock to me. They don't. And I know you kind of said that right now. If you want to, go for it.
Oh, I was going to say, I agree with you 1,000,000%, but as far as influence is concerned, Joseph, they influence the fuck out of rock and roll music.
I can see
that. If you hear While My Guitar Gently Weeps, the guitar solo and play in My Guitar Gently Weeps, everything 70s rock, hard 70s rock in the late 70s was probably because of My Guitar Gently Weeps and the way John Lennon and played that guitar and George Harrison. They're very, very, very influential in rock and roll music. And that's why I think I have them at number 2. I think that goes far and beyond. They had a lot of poppy stuff and commercial songs and fun songs, but they did have a lot of songs that were very rock influential. And to your point, Helter Skelter, like Randy told that story. Like Paul McCartney heard the Who played a hard song. You want a fucking heavy metal song? I'll fucking play you a heavy metal song. And they created Helter Skelter. I thought that was really, really awesome and epic, because they could do whatever the fuck they wanted to do. They were such musical geniuses. But go on. I'm sorry.
No, it's cool.
I want to. Oh, go ahead, Joseph.
I'm sorry.
No, it's cool.
I want to talk about the Beatles too.
No. Yeah, let me just to finish it up. The way I looked at the Beatles is kind of how I talked about the Rolling Stones. Great music. I do like the songs. I'm not gonna say that I don't. I just don't. They're not rock to me. There's some the bulk of the catalog were these pop songs. I mean, I know it just look no further than their early start in their career, doing Shake It, Twist and Shout, just this it's
great
borderline
guitar playing Twist and Shout, Joseph.
It was, but it's borderline like English, not surfer, like well-dressed surfer boy English, but so that's how I looked at this. Randy,
Joseph,
go for it.
To that argument, Joseph, you got to think about those songs, She Loves You, Yeah, Shake It Up. That was 1963. There was no heavy metal. There was no distortion.
That was the hard rock of the time.
That was the hard rock. Yeah, that was. And when I think of, and I'm going to talk about the Beatles later, so I'm going to sort of table.
The devil's got hands and he uses them for holding. Sorry. From Dewey Coxwell Car. Sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I would say if, I'm looking at my top 5 list and, Pink Floyd, Queen, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, a lot of their songs do sound like Beatles songs. A lot of their harmonies and their tones do sound like they're influenced by the Beatles. Obviously, the Beatles had influences themselves, Little Richard and some of these other bands that they really looked up to. Chuck Berry, as we mentioned last week. We won't mention that dirty bastard. He's the
Marvin Berry.
Before, I won't say anything about Chuck Berry other than before R. Kelly, there was Chuck Berry. All right. Anyway, so I'm going to table the rest of my Beatles talk until I have them coming up. So we'll go ahead and skip my part for now. So we're number 2. Joseph, who'd you have for number 2?
All right. So at number 2, I had Black Sabbath. I went with Black Sabbath for this one. All right. Bob, I know you had them at number 6.
Yes.
Black Sabbath to me, and I want to say this now. The Ronnie James Dio era of Black Sabbath doesn't register to me. It doesn't.
There was still that was a great era still of music, dude. Black Sabbath was still great with Ronnie Dio.
I know that
it's nothing without Ozzy, but Ronnie Dio still sing his fucking ass off.
I know, and that's nothing against Dio. He had a tremendous career, a solo career on his own. I just personally, to me, Black Sabbath is and always is Ozzy on vocals. And to your point, Randy, you were talking just a little bit about the Beatles, and yeah, you know what? There may not have been anything real heavy or hard rock of the 60s at the time. So this is kind of like what you were mentioning about the Beatles, but you'll get into that later. I think the Black Sabbath formed in the 60s, and when I want to say that they didn't I want to say that, you know what? They didn't want to do the Beatles type of music. They wanted to do something different. And so they took these tones, they took these the guitars and drums and did all this incredibly low tempo, dark, and it wasn't so much that they were playing tremendous guitar riffs and whatnot, just simply doing a bang bang bang, it was insane. Yeah. It's so simple, but it's fucking crazy.
Same mind, same brain, Joseph, same brain, baby.
It's so crazy, this sound, and then and the dread and doom in Ozzy's voice on those first albums, man. And I know later on, there's some of the songs, they have their own songs where it's a little, not so much rock and roll.
They're making money.
Yeah. But the start, I mean, Jesus, the influence on the pretty much every band that I like and listen to, whether it's hard rock, heavy metal, alt metal, death metal, extreme technical death metal, I mean, you name it.
Technical
just
difficulties.
Doom metal, stoner metal, every fucking band that I like can trace their roots to Black Sabbath. They can. And I just think because of that is fucking amazing. On a family tree of heavy metal music, there's some bands, there's other bands other than Black Sabbath, but Black Sabbath is up on the top there, and everything that follows underneath that is because of them. And I just think that's crazy. That's I know the music is timeless to me. The sound. I know they put out I think it was in 2007. They put out another album. It was called 13. I listened to it. I still so listening to that last release that they did, official full album. You know what? It's still hit heavy. They went back kind of old school. Unfortunately, they didn't have their original drummer, but it was still fucking amazing. It really was. I think my only knock against the album before so I can wrap this up. I recommend going to check out the album if for some reason you haven't. It's called 13. I think it's a little too polished, and that's probably why some people there's people that would say it's just fucking great. It's great to have the original Black Sabbath together, even though they're missing a drummer. I can't remember his name.
Bill Ward.
But it just sounds too polished. And if you go back and listen to the original, obviously different time, different recording techniques, different equipment available to the band. It just sound more grimier and doom, and I obviously I prefer that, and so that's why I got them at 2, because I got them at 2, even though my number 1 is a Descendant. You put them on top of that family tree, and everything that follows underneath, everything that I like is from this band. So that's my number 2.
Ozzy Osbourne. We mentioned Queen and we mentioned Freddie Mercury as being one of the greatest frontmen of all time. Ozzy Osbourne is the greatest, if not the greatest hard rock metal frontman of all fucking time. For a guy that has done enough drugs to kill a fucking frat house, this guy sounds so clear on the mic and amazing. We made
just released a new album.
Yeah, and this is, and I'm not trying to be an asshole or to make a joke out of this. The lead singer from Motley Crue, we posted a video like he was so wasted at a concert, Vince Neil, a few months ago when he was singing, you couldn't make out any of the words, and you're like, Jesus Christ, man. I mean, I love Vince Neil, man. I hope he gets the help he can get so he can fix himself up, because that was just it was really bad. It was really, really bad. So bad that it was laughable, and you laugh, and then you're like, fuck, man, that makes me feel bad for Vince Neil. Ozzy Osbourne has been, didn't even know where the fuck he's at, and he sounds crystal clear, like beautiful. For somebody who's a prince of fucking darkness, he sounds like a fucking angel when he sings. And I mentioned this in the last one, like he brought that metal dark, deep dark lyrics and sound where you hear it and it's like got that Halloween sound, that dark sound, that like creepy vibe. But then he sings and you're like, oh, I don't know what the fuck he's singing about, but I'm into this. And the guitar plays, and the Randy Rhoads. I mean, all the everything about them, man, is just so fucking amazing. For you to have them at number 3, is this where you're at, or 2?
2.
For you to have them at number 2, I don't really have an argument with them, because if you have the bands that you have in your top 10 list, you better fucking have a Black Sabbath and Ozzy being number 2, because they're the ones that inspired all those fucking dark, heavy metal, crazy bands. You got to come back to fucking Ozzy, dude. He is the godfather. He is the prince of goddamn darkness, like he says. So I agree with that. If you want to have him at 2 for your taste in music, I can see that as number 2. I think it's a great pick.
One of my favorite Conan O'Brien skits is he's hanging out with Ozzy Osbourne. And Ozzy, when he's talking, they have subtitles because you can't understand what the hell he's saying. But when he starts singing, clear as a fucking bell. And then he was singing a song and he stops and he asks Conan O'Brien, what are the rest of the lyrics? And Conan says, you're the one that wrote the song. I don't know. But I mean, Ozzy's just incredible. And he's a likable guy. I think a lot of the MTV show in the early 2000s introduced him to a worldwide audience and introduced his family. So I think Ozzy became more of an icon after he became more mainstream. It is my biggest regret to not have Black Sabbath. That's like leaving Kareem Abdul-Jabbar out of the all-time NBA team. So that was my fault. I'm not going to change my list because I'm not going to, submit to that.
Nobody's asking. Nobody would. Yeah. We would never ask you to.
Yeah. What's nuts is, can I just say this?
Sure.
When we're talking about our top 5 list, each one of our picks in the top 5, they all have just these incredible lead vocalists, and they were just, Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah,
how could you argue? How could you argue with Ozzy Osbourne, man?
When he sings "Mama, I'm Coming Home" or Changes or anything soft. I mean, it's really
Goodbye to Romance. Geez.
Goodbye to Romance. It's good.
I know that's his song.
Really good. Yeah, but I mean, as a lead singer, he's
just talking about him.
He is so like smooth, emotional. But I mean, Mama, I'm Coming Home is one of the ones that always strikes.
Well, I mean, like I mentioned when I bought that Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon album, I also bought the Ozman Cometh album, which had all his greatest hits. And dude, this is the second part of that story. Hearing that, like, just totally changed my view on music and what it could be. And holy shit, dude, is this what I've been missing out on? Listening to fucking Bone Thugs and Harmony? I should have been listening to Ozzy Osbourne. By the way, Bone Thugs and Harmony is awesome, by the way. But anyways, I mean, he has a lot of great, emotional, fantastic lyrics as well. They're not just all dark and like crazy. They really do strike a chord in a lot of different ways.
And all 4 members are still alive, right, Joseph? All original 4 members? Is that correct? Okay, he's giving me a thumbs up. Okay, sorry, he's got the mic on mute. He's got a little cough going on. So, I mean, Ozzy, I know it's not about Ozzy. He'll be with us forever. But from blues to classical to metal, Black Sabbath had it all. And they even had disabilities. I mean, they had the disabilities. Tony Iommi famously lost the tips of his 2 fingers in an industrial accident from the very day he planned to quit his job. So he had to rearrange his guitar to make sure that, you know, his disability could, you know, was okay when he was playing the guitar. Ozzy was at least 87% cocaine and alcohol. So that guy just, they scare people. That's what rock is supposed to do. I think they're amazing. I do regret leaving them out. If I did a top 20 list, I would fucking have them on there. But I mean, I can't hate Black Sabbath if you're looking at the purview of this is the kind of music I like. These are the bands I like. And you go, like you said, Joseph, I think you put it expertly. When you look at the family tree of that genre, Black Sabbath is sitting at the top.
Mm-hmm. Can I mention one last point to what Randy said? He mentioned perfectly. We're talking about the greatest rock bands of all time, and he didn't just mention Ozzy Osbourne. We mentioned Tony Iommi, Bill Ward,
Geezer Butler.
Yeah, dude, and Geezer Butler. Dude, like
so much.
We know these guys. They weren't just a lead singer. They had one of the greatest guitarists and greatest drummers, and the bass, the sound that they created wasn't just that Ozzy was an amazing vocalist, because he was, but they created such a dark, doomy, heavy sound, and then Ozzy would come out and sing, and you're like, holy fuck, that mix. It just so different. It's so weird, and it works so perfectly that I can agree that they deserve to be on the top 5 list.
So much so, yeah. Like how you said. I'm sorry, real quick about each member. Each member being known and well known and appreciated and admired. So much so that I talked about the last album that they did, 13 together. It sans Bill Ward. People don't accept it. There's people that if you read online, they don't accept this album because it's not. It was nice, like the concept of doing another Black Sabbath album with having Ozzy back to sing was awesome. But then you didn't get Bill Ward to do it, so it's, you know, there's fans that say no. Well, then it's not a true Black Sabbath reunion or record, you know, or some, you know. So it's crazy.
For number 2, I had the Rolling Stones, and we talked about them.
Boo. No,
I mean, blues. I just have a few things to say about the Rolling Stones. I think we covered them pretty well. Blues and rock and roll, counterculture, the British invasion. Brian Jones. The one knock I have on the Rolling Stones is that they went through, you know, more lineups than the fucking Yankees. I mean, they were in and out with, other than like the 3 mainstays that they had guys coming in and out of the band. So, and when you go to these Rolling Stones concerts, it's more than just the band. They bring in like opera singers, the choir.
Yes.
They bring out saxophone.
It's a fucking production.
Yeah, it is a production. And that doesn't make it any less rock and roll.
No, it doesn't.
It does make it a little detached from everything else, and that's the only reason I have him at number 2. And Brian Jones, who died in 1969, his use of unorthodox rock instruments like the marimba and Under My Thumb, which is one of my favorite Stones songs, and the sitar in Painted Black, they were introducing new instruments. They were creating new sounds. They went from a strictly blues band to rock and roll to, I mean, everything. They're not heavy metal. You're not going to get a heavy experience from the Rolling Stones, but you're going to get good rock. You're going to get arena rock. You're going to get an entertaining show. That's why I have them at number 2.
So I completely disagree with you that you don't say you're not going to get a heavy metal, because you do with Painted Black. When you hear Painted Black, that screams to me dark, heavy metal. We were just talking about Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath. That screams that to me, dude. So I give them props for that. They did have a really big, a really wide, eclectic mix of music when rock and roll. They were definitely very bluesy. Then they got into some rock, and then they got into some commercial and very poppy stuff. You know, that was cool. Like I said, they remind me a lot of the Beatles in a different kind of way, that they produced a wide range of music in their catalog, and you got to respect that. If somebody were to have them at 2, like you do, and I have them at 5, and somebody would have them at 10, I'm like, as long as you have them in the top 10, yeah, Joseph, I'm talking to you. As long as you have them in the top 10 somewhere, because they are. Now, if we were talking greatest bands of all time, again, I think that Joseph would have to have them in there, just like the Beatles, because they do have a wide mix. I mean, they do have a wide mix of music. I can't argue that you have them at number 2. They're in the top 10. That's great. You have them at number 2. I think that's a little too high, but that's okay with me. I can still agree that they should be here, and they should be in the part of the conversation.
Yeah, I'll just kind of refer back to what I said about them previously. Great music, great songs. I appreciate. I do listen to them. I just top 10 bands, top 20, top 15 bands of all time. Yeah, they're going to factor into that because they are a great band. I just don't get that rock sound. I've said that before. You can hear it, like Bob mentioned, on a few songs, like I said earlier, Painted Black, things like that. You get that, but it just kind of goes back to, you know, tremendous songs that they have. For me, not considering them, you know, the greatest of rock songs, because I don't see them as that. Who did Watch Mojo have it too? I'm just curious. I'm sorry, you're gonna say something?
Let's actually go over their entire top 10 list real quick before we get to our number 1. At 10, they had Radiohead, Watch Mojo. At 9, Beach Boys. At 8, U2, fair. 7, they had Metallica. 6, they had The Who. 5, they had Rolling Stones. 4, Pink Floyd. 3, Queen. 2, Led Zeppelin. And number 1, they had the Beatles. Who'd you have for your number 1 pick, Bob?
It was between the Beatles and Led Zeppelin, man. And when I think of rock and roll music, dude, it's got to be Led Zeppelin. Now, Led Zeppelin had everything. It's not, I think I mentioned this before, we're talking about top rock band, so it's not just the lead singer and Robert Plant. You know, they had the great guitarist. They had John Bonham. They had great bassist, guitarist, drummer, lead singer. He's one of the best frontmen of all time. They had the lyrics. They had the great guitar solos. They were hard rock. They were blues. They were metal. They were everything that you want a rock band to be. They had this mysteriousness to them. They're part of the occult. You know what I mean? They had that dark side to them, man, that a lot of people, you know, when we talk about, they had this mystery to them. So it wasn't just this happy-go-lucky band that put out some great music. They had the great solos. Everybody tries to emulate Jimmy Page on the guitar because he's the fucking man. I think we mentioned It Might Get Loud with Jack White and The Edge. They did a show with Jimmy Page. If you haven't seen that documentary, oh my God, it's really so fucking amazing. They're all playing the guitar together and talking music, and there's a point where Jimmy Page starts playing the guitar, and like Jack White sitting down, and so is The Edge, and they like move to the edge of their seats just so they can get a closer view of Jimmy Page, who's like 3 feet in front of him playing the guitar. If you hear Robert Plant sing, talking about a voice of an angel, like you hear Ozzy Osbourne, Robert Plant singing is just otherworldly, dude. That guy is amazing. He had some notes. Maybe it's the tight fucking pants that he wore, but he had some fucking notes that are just like, wow. And you know, you think of rock and roll, you think of Led Zeppelin, and that's why I put them just slightly ahead of the Beatles, because they are, in their entire catalog, rock and roll. We did the best 70s rock song of all time, and I chose Led Zeppelin, and it was one of their slower songs in Stairway to Heaven. Even their slower song had this intimate, crazy guitar solo that went with it that was a little bit hard. You can't say, if you're mentioning best rock bands of all time, and you mentioned the 70s rock and roll, the best 70s drummer was Bonham, and the best guitarist was Jimmy Page. The best lead singer was Robert Plant. You want to talk about all time? Jimmy Page is top 3 best guitarists of all time. Robert Plant, top 3 best lead singers and frontmen of all time. They had it all. And yes, the longevity was not there because they were only together for such a short period of time. But considering, and I'm going to throw this out there, I mentioned the occult again. So apparently they sold their souls so they could have a rock career. Look this up. There's actually a really good book on Amazon that you can read. Some really cool shit. So they sold their souls to the devil, just like Jack Johnson at the Crossroads, which is pretty cool. So they could have this great rock band, but then apparently it came at a price. That's why at a certain point when they hit the height of their popularity, Robert Plant was in this really crazy car accident with his wife and his child, and he got all fucked up, but he survived. And then later, John Bonham got this. I think he died of throat cancer, but he didn't really smoke cigarettes or something like that. He died of a disease. I want to say it was cancer, but it wasn't related to anything that he really did. So it was kind of like the devil come in and pay his dues, like, it's time to pay the toll. So they had this mysteriousness to them if you didn't know about it, which adds another fucking element. So now they're heavy, now they're dark, now they're crazy, this dark doom metal, kind of like Black Sabbath, but they also have that blues, they also have that lead singer, they also have that those ballads that just hit on a different level. So they're my greatest rock band of all time. I know I went on a rant, but I think they deserve it, dude, because they're one of the most influential and greatest rock bands of all time.
I think John Von, and I had to read about this, but that was very interesting to hear about that sort of aspect and to look up that book. I'm definitely going to have to read that.
You have to, dude. It's cool. It's cool as shit.
So it says here, John Bonham just didn't wake up. He drank a lot one night, fell asleep, did not wake up. And
that's what it was.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
Yeah.
That he went to sleep just feeling fine. Like they're like, he didn't go overboard. He drank vodka that night and he fell asleep. And he wasn't that old either. He was like in his early 30s, I want to say.
That is crazy. Wow, that is interesting. The only thing I love Led Zeppelin. I have them at number 3. Can't argue with having them at number 1. I think a lot of people would agree with you, just like they would agree with Joseph's pick, and they would agree with mine. I just think it's one of those things. And I wrote, you ever sit in a car when you get to work or home from work and you just let a song play out? You can't do that with some Led Zeppelin songs because they'll throw everything at you. Plant moaning, Page playing, violins, dogs barking, Dennis drilling. Just some of their songs are a little too long.
No quarter. You want to smoke a doobie? You listen to No Fucking Quarter. You think that's the song right there.
That is a tremendous fucking song.
They're an amazing band. I have nothing negative to say. Joseph, what do you got?
I had Led Zeppelin at 4. I could have easily had him at 3. So I'm 1 and 2 were the only ones that I was sure of. Black Sabbath at 2, and then I'll get into my 1 right now. I could have easily had Zeppelin at 3 myself. I mean, Bob, what more can be said? I already said that what Bob has said. It's nitpicking at this point. Like I said, I kind of like as we've gone through this and as we've talked, I don't know. I'm kind of questioning whether I should have had them at 3. But it's
meant to be a cult and Joseph's all for it, man.
No, it's really, really amazing. I love this band. Yes, like particularly one of the songs that Bob just mentioned. Just the diverse sound of the music, even though it is rock, it's hard rock. It's borderline depressing and doomy, and it's with a song like No Quarter, which is just fucking phenomenal. That's one of my favorite songs. I love to hear bands that I like. Unfortunately, there's at least 2 bands that I know of that have done incredible covers of that song, and they do it justice. I just will point out real quickly, and don't want to offend Bob, but I know people are out there listening. Bob knows who Robert Johnson is. He said Jack a few times, so he said Jack Johnson.
Oh yeah, I don't know why I said Jack Johnson. I'm sorry, Robert
Bob
Johnson.
very much knows who Robert Johnson is.
Because that was at the Beaches past weekend, isn't it? No, yes, Robert Johnson at the Crossroads.
Yeah.
Speaking of Robert Johnson, if you haven't seen the Crossroads, have you seen Robert Johnson? There's like an animated Robert Johnson Crossroads thing on Netflix.
Awesome.
A cool little documentary. It's fucking awesome.
About it, the situation
about
supposedly.
On the Crossroads is really cool.
Yeah, dude.
I said Jack Johnson. Fucking shit. Never live that down. Son of a bitch.
Yeah. Anyway, I had him at 4. I could have had him at 3. I'm pretty solid with my 1 and 2. I think, like Randy said, you got him at 1. Perfect. That's great. That's where they deserve to be. They at least deserve to be in, I think, in a top 3 anywhere. Definitely on their Mount Rushmore. so to speak.
You know, Bob, you had mentioned how nobody plays with them and sounds like them, and I keep coming back to Greta Van Fleet and how they tell them just completely.
Here's what I love about Greta Van Fleet. They're like, we were inspired by Aerosmith and Steven Tyler, and even Robert Plant was, oh, get off it, mate. Get the fuck out of here. Robert Plant, get the fuck out of here. We all know who you try to emulate, God damn it.
They try to say they sound a lot like them, but I mean, they don't have the magic that Led Zeppelin does, but they do sound like them. You know, interesting. Joseph, who'd you have for your number one?
All right, so at number one, a band that's already obviously been mentioned, I picked Metallica. Metallica is my number
baby,
one.
Joseph.
I just, on a list like this, I gotta, and I know I said earlier when I was talking about Sabbath that although Sabbath is above on that family tree, and Metallica is descendants of Metallica is descendants of Black Sabbath, I had to kind of factor in everything that went into putting a list like this together. You know, as much as I didn't want to, but yes, they do have the influence. They do have the success in sales. They do have, you know, quality and enduring, you know, songs that have a tremendous legacy. I think aside from all that, just, they are, if not the longest running metal band. The lineup changes, unfortunately, have been, one of them was because of a horrible accident. Unfortunately, I can only imagine what the band might have sounded like today if Cliff Burton was still with us. It's amazing. Would they even still be together? That's you know, people question that as well. I'd like to believe that they would be. The lineup changes have just been to one instrument, and it's happened. Well, I mean, there's in early on. I know there's a Ron McGovney played bass. I know Dave Mustaine original guitarist, but I know that was early on in the beginning, and I know Mustaine has his writing credits, and I know he talks about it to this day. But for me, it's Kirk. Kirk is the guy, and I just don't think the band would have been where they are today if Mustaine was still in the band. Anyway, this band, the amazing things, the Grammys, the countless awards and nominations. I love the fact that this band is humble. They are. I mean, they are to a point. I know people would disagree because they do have their attitude where they're like, we're fucking Metallica, we're the biggest band, but they are humble. At least they appreciate it. The love that they have for their fans and the way I know Randy mentioned ticket prices, but you know what, dude? It's worth it. It's worth it. We've seen them live. It is worth it, dude.
Twice.
It is so worth it. It's so, and I will pay to see them again. Their influence on the metal community and every subgenre from that, the things that they do for the younger bands, for unknown bands that are just starting out. They put on they used to do the Summer Sanitarium tour. They still do some festival stuff. They still kind of create these things, and they welcome younger bands that they like to come play with them, be seen. We want you here. We want to expose the world to you guys. We think you all are awesome. We appreciate you. That's some amazing fucking things that they do. There's people that will say, well, charitable work that's not hard rock. That's not heavy metal. You know what, man? Helping people is fucking cool regardless. Metallica's all within my hands, foundation, a tremendous fucking thing that they do to raise money for all kinds of things, and just most recently doing I believe it was, I read they want to they put together some kind of training thing or some video school thing where they want to teach kids to play. They want them to, and so I just think that's the charitable stuff. That's just, it's a side note, but I just think it's really cool. Again, the influence, the history, the incredible songs, the not being afraid to fucking take a chance to say, this is what we're gonna do, and we don't care if you fucking like it. We're not afraid to do something different. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we will come back and we will kick your ass again with something new. Just them never being afraid to take a chance to do something. I mean, it's kind of like I said with Black Sabbath. Every band that gets interviewed, sometimes they're asked about influence. Metallica is right up there. One of the most, to me, one of the greatest frontmans of all time, with an incredible voice. You see him, just most recently, we talked about it. I'm sorry, I'm going to try to wrap this up. Him being self-conscious because he cares so much. He wants to give people the the best, and if he feels that he's anything less than that, it upsets him, and I just think that's fucking cool. And just, I mean, what more can be said about this band that we haven't already said? They're my number one. Metallica is part of the Rushmore. If you're gonna do right now, I have 2 on that. If it's 5 people, if it's a top 5 Mount Rushmore, or if it's 4, whatever it is, it's Metallica and Black Sabbath and possibly, probably, like I said, Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, but Metallica is on there.
You never mentioned that James Hetfield looks like the Cowardly Lion.
Quit sending me that.
You're sending me that shit. Have you seen that meme? That's fucking hilarious. I think Joseph nailed it perfectly, dude. I know Randy's got a lot to say about it, but just really quickly, Metallica is one of those bands when you're looking at a hard rock band, it's hard for a hard rock band to survive 2 decades. And not only has Metallica not survived 2 decades, they've survived 4 decades of music. They were in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, and now they're in the late 2000s. I mean, they went through the 2010 to 20. They're in their 5th decade of rock and roll, and they're still selling out arenas, and they're still doing what they're doing. To have that kind of longevity and the type of music that they play is just like you don't see that kind of shit. You know what I mean? You really don't. And to have like the type of musicians that they do, again, it's rock band. Having Kirk Hammett, who is one of the most underrated guitarist of all time. If we ever do top 10 guitarists or best guitarists of all time, I'm sure he's going to be an honorable mention because he really does produce some of the best guitar solos, hard rock solos of all time. And then you have James Hetfield, who's like this staple of the rock band. And you think of hard rock lead singers, and he's got to be at the top of your list. And you have Lars and his little Lars playing the fucking drums. And then the drummers, dude. I mean, the bassists, they've had 3 different basses, and each and every one of them has created such a great sound for the type of music they're playing at that time. Sure. So they it's not like they, I feel really bad that they lost their first one in that tragic bus accident, and then they got Jason Newsted who really came in and filled that void, and then they have Trujillo now, who again brought some new young life to them, even though he's around the same age as them. So they're a great,
he brought just a different style. It's a different vibe, a different playing style, but it works. And I'm sorry, just real quick to add to that, I with the lineup changes again. I mean, Trujillo's been in the band for almost 20 years now. So it's like, it's not just like he's another fill-in. I mean, it is what it is. Jason left the band, for personal reasons and health reasons. But hey, the next guy came in, and it's not like they've had to replace him. He's fucking still kicking. I mean, the situations are the way they are, but you can't tell me Trujillo's not part of the band. I mean, he's been with them for almost 20 years. So
yeah, no shit. So crazy. All right, Rand, give us your spiel. Yeah, tell us.
I don't have much to say about Metallica. I thought that was a very compelling.
I'm fucking around.
I have one of the reasons why I love doing this show with you guys, because I learn a lot of things, and I've learned some things about bands I didn't know before. And so just to get an education on this is always just an inspiring thing. I think when Joseph was making his compelling, I don't want to say an argument, but when he was talking about Metallica, I almost feel like we should play the instrumental to Nothing Else Matters underneath what he was saying, because it was really profound. And I mean that for real. I teach college students, and a lot of college students come in with Metallica t-shirts, and I always think it's the Stranger Things thing, because, they relate to the show.
Of course.
I talk to these students afterwards. I'll call them after class and say, hey, well, what's your favorite Metallica song? And, they go into some deep cuts. And I'm like, these are like 18, 19, 20-year-old students who are talking about some deep Metallica cuts. And they're not just saying Enter Sandman or Master of Puppets. They're going into some of the songs we spoke of when we did our Metallica show, which has garnered a lot of hits. Thank you all for listening, a lot of downloads. And I am really impressed with the generations. I mean, these are kids who, their parents were listening to Metallica, and they're carrying on, and maybe their kids will listen to Metallica. So I will say this: out of all the bands listed here, and yes, do I think Metallica at number 1 is too high? Yes, of course, but that's not the point. The point is that from all the bands on this list, Metallica has shown the most growth out of all the bands. And yes, you can say, well, they had 50 years to do it, but they've been vulnerable. I mean, James Hetfield said, I had to learn to sing when we did the Black Album. And, I know I'm getting older and I know this and that. And, we spent 7 years underground and now, now we're paying, and the whole Napster, and who cares about that stuff? I think for the music that you like, Joseph, and for the influences, this does fit in perfect. Now, I don't know if a lot of people would put Metallica as number one, but I do think they're one of the most influential bands, long-standing. They've had their ups and downs. They've had their tragedy. They've had their triumphs. But the thing is, they've learned, they've grown, and they've endured. And you can't say that about every band on this list.
Nope.
Yeah. So that's what I'll say about them. And for my number one band, I had the Beatles. I mean, how could you not have them on your list?
There we go. Let's get into it. I love the fucking Beatles. First of all, I just want to, before I get into any kind of argument, before I get myself in trouble, I fucking love the Beatles. They're one of my favorite bands of all time. Go ahead, Randy.
I'm already in trouble.
I don't have. We've talked about the Beatles so much that I didn't want to repeat any points we've made on previous episodes. They were a part of the natural evolution of what became rock, and that's why I think they're so important, so influential. Did they get it right all the time? No, they didn't, but they kept innovating. They kept on evolving. They kept on inspiring. Rock is more about sound. It's about spirit. It's about image. It's about style. It's about popularity. And that's what the Beatles were enhancing every song, every cut, every year. And when the Who, of course, Bob, we mentioned when they said nobody could rock like them, the Beatles put out Helter Skelter, and they could have put in a whole fucking album of Helter Skelters. They didn't have to, but they could have, and that's the thing. That's like they were like the Michael Jordan. And then I took that personally. They had that attitude. Yeah. They could do whatever they want. They were the Michael Jordan, the LeBron James, whatever you want to, sports comparison you want to make. They were the best.
LeBron James.
They had
that. Dare, sir. Never mind, he lost.
He's number two. Okay,
should have said Kobe.
Number three. Kobe's number two. Well, that's another debate.
That's another debate.
Yeah. I think they had the best songwriters and performers in the band, in the whole entire world. I just think with their legacy, that the fact that people still are into them, people are still wearing Beatles t-shirts, they're still putting Beatles on their wall, they're still listening to them, they're buying their old records, they keep on reinventing them. And I think the Beatles are a good starter band. Like, you could play that for your kids. They could grow up to be Beatles fans and listen to their deeper cuts, and then just grow with them. I think the Beatles are just a perfect band. You could say what you will about their pop songs, but they also rocked out. They had a legacy, and they inspired so many. What do you guys think?
The Beatles are the greatest band of all time. If you want to talk about the most influential band of all time, it's the Beatles. Not exactly the most influential rock band, not exactly the greatest rock band, but if you want to talk the most influential band of all time, it's the Beatles, because they showed artists that you don't have to just be one-dimensional. You can be rock, you can be hard rock, you can be pop, you can have ballads, you can be creative, you can use Indian music, we can be psychedelic, we could have a song like Blackbird, which is very, very anti-establishment, anti-government, anti-racism, which is fucking beautiful song. They could be everything that you want it to be. They could be anything that you want it to be. And that's what makes the Beatles so great, that they were able to do all that within a 9-year period, for them to give you so many touches and great hits of so many different genres of rock music and regular music and popular music and protest music and like cultured music, to give you some of that Indian culture and the lyrics, and everything about this band is so fucking phenomenal, man. And it breaks my heart that I can't call them the number one rock band of all time. But if you told me we're gonna go who's the best band of all time, it's the Beatles, and it's not even fucking close. It's not even fucking close. So I agree with you 1,000,000%. If you want to call them number one, that's okay with me, man. When I think of rock music, I think of guitar, I think of distortion, I think of the blues, I think of something that's a little bit different than the majority of the Beatles music. You know what I mean? Granted, we mentioned, when the 60s, I want to Shaking a Baby, when I was thinking Shaking a Baby, Twist and Shout. That was the heavy metal of that time, Joseph. Like, nobody was singing with distortion and shit like they were doing at that time. Nobody, dude. Priests weren't listening to that shit. Schools were there locking that shit down. They didn't want to see their daughters screaming and taking off their goddamn clothes on the goddamn Ed Sullivan show to hear their music. They were definitely grunge before grunge, metal before metal, hard rock before, but they were the standouts. They were the oddballs. They were the ones that like the mainstream were like, we like them, but that's too much. I don't want my daughters to like that kind of shit. So they were. I mean, they were everything, dude. They were one of my favorite bands of all. If like on a daily basis, I'll say this: on the way to school, I take my kids to school every day. We get in the car, we back out from the garage, and the first thing we put on is the Beatles channel on Sirius Radio. Shout out to Sirius Radio. We listen to Sirius because we listen to the Beatles channel because my daughter, they will be. My daughter listens to that channel every single day. When we get in the car, we go anywhere. She's like, "Can we put on the Beatles station?" Because that's her music and that's my music. And they have some great guitar solos. They have one of the best guitars of all time, John Lennon, he gets all this credit for his lyrics and his singing, but his guitar play is fucking phenomenal. So is George Harrison. So I like the pick. You picked them at number one. I'm not going to argue against it, man. They're one of the greatest bands. They're the greatest band of all time. They're just not the greatest rock band of all time. Joseph.
I like the fact that I'll just kind of say this. I think the things that you all have said about the Beatles are great. You know, you can introduce them to your kids. That can be their first band. I love that, you know, Bob, your daughter, is a big fan. I think that's really cool. I'm sure if I had my own kids, you know, I'd drive them to school listening to Hell Slave, but, you know, it is what it is.
You mean Goatwhore.
You know, Dad, you put on Goatwhore. But, you know, and I want to say, when Bob gets close to the mic and that's when he's really serious. So, so he really meant that one. Anyway, no, man, I mean, I just, what more can I say? They're not on, I didn't have them on the list, and I'm sure everybody hates me for that. I didn't have them in my top 15. I didn't have them in anything like that, but it is how I feel. The music to me isn't the way what I look for in a topic like this, in a discussion like this, and, you know, a list like this. And I went with how I felt, and I know that's not going to be, but I acknowledge, obviously, like I said, the career, the history, the songs. They're great songs. I like listening to them. Some I don't like listening to, but it is what it is. And I'll just leave it like that. I understand both of your placements on this list, and I understand Watch Mojos. You know, they're gonna. It's history. It's the music's timeless, and it's lasted through the years with kids today listening to it, with young kids today listening to it. It'll still be like that, as I'm assuming, at least I hope, you know, for generations to come. Excellent. It's just not rock music to me.
Respect your points, Joseph. And I think a lot of people, like I said, my colleague comes into my office and says, I agree. I don't think the Beatles should be on this list. And it's all you know, conjecture. It's all just opinions. There is no wrong list. If somebody wants to put Metallica, if you want to put like fucking Drowning Pool at number one, then hey, you're getting ridiculous. But you know, if I
agree with that.
And if somebody said, hey, you know what, Radiohead means the world to me because I was listening to them when I was in a dark place, and they brought me up, and if that's their number one, then that's a personal special meaning for them. So there's no wrong on the list. It's, you know, we talked about Watch Mojo and how we disagreed, but that's the beauty of a list like this, is that there is no right answer. Guys, final words on the top 10.
If you followed along, thank you. I appreciate it. I hope you don't I hope you've given some thought into my criteria. Like we've already said, I would love to hear yours. I really do. This coworker of yours, I would like coworker friend. We don't need to mention you by name. Let's just leave it at that. But coworker friend who's listening to this episode, please submit your list. I want to see how it compares to mine. It sounds like we got some stuff in common there, and I'd really like to kind of like look at that one and kind of debate it, you know, against mine and debate it against your alls as well. So please, you know, it's like Randy said, this is a lot of it has maybe some special meaning to you. Some of these songs most definitely meant something to you for these particular bands, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, like Randy said. So please, you know, do your own. I hope that we've changed your mind. I hope that we've opened your mind to the possibility of, you know, seeing how we see.
Because some of our episodes we get huge numbers, and a lot of our episodes we get pretty decent numbers. It's a humble brag, people. We don't get a lot of numbers, but when we do, it feels pretty cool.
And the fact that five people listen is just amazing. So thank you.
That's not our like parents and cousins and primo. Like, oh, you think you know everything? You don't know shit. But like, it's really cool to have people listen to our show. And if you listen to this show, like we always said, we're not experts at all. We're just huge fans of music and movies and TV shows and pop culture in general. And especially when we talk about rock and roll, dude, this is right up our alley. Like, we didn't go into specifics. We didn't name album sales. We didn't, because this is not about that kind of shit. It's just three guys talking about our top 10 rock bands of all time. And I hope you agree. I hope you disagree. I hope you tune in and listen. I hope you message us or send us messages. I hope you dance. I hope you I hope you listen in and like agree with us or disagree with us. Send us your top 10 list. Tell us why you think Metallica should have been number one or not number one. Tell us why the Beatles are the greatest band, because I know you want to. And then tell us why U2 sucks and they shouldn't have been on there. And then we'll all tell Randy I told you so. But we're really happy that if you listen to our show, like, I think this is one of our best shows because we're just talking from experience and what we really like. And I think this is a good one, man. I hope fans listen in and then message us, please. Give us your opinions. We love that kind of stuff. Yeah, we love that kind of stuff.
Randy, if Metallica comes to San Antonio again on the next album cycle tour, whenever that may be, you are going with me and Bob. You will experience this like the way we have on the floor. So make sure you wear some comfortable shoes, and you will be a believer, sir.
You could film me while I'm crying.
I'll pay for half of your ticket. You gotta pay for the rest.
All right. You don't have to pay for my ticket. I'll be there. Thank you guys so much. Great insight. And that's our show, everyone. Listeners, we'd love to hear from you. Hit us up and let us know what your favorite top 10 rock bands of all time are. Most importantly, let us know what you think of the show. You may reach us at formidableopponents@gmail.com and follow us on all social media platforms by searching for Formidable Opponents. Once again, we want to thank Creative Little Pill for her artwork. And join us next episode. It'll be something a little fun and different. We hope you all check it out. So for Bob and Joseph, this is Randall. We'll see you all next time.
Never be, never free.
Free yourself.